Did you know that the most important part of your entire body is your central nervous system? Your central nervous system, also known as the master system, is made up of your brain and your spinal cord, and it controls every single function in your entire body. In fact, your central nervous system is so important that it's the only body part that is totally encased in bone for its protection. Starting at the top is your brain. And your brain is the central processing unit of your body, and it coordinates and computes all the electrical signals that are sent throughout your nervous system and your entire body. So from your brain, electrical impulses or signals are sent down your spinal cord and travel all the way to the base of your spine. And branching off of your spinal cord are these fine thread-like structures called spinal nerves, and they exit between the vertebrae of the spinal column to supply all your muscles, cells, and organs, and from there, the electrical impulses are sent back up to the brain in a feedback loop. And at every level in your spine, the exiting spinal nerves supply specific muscles and organs. For instance, starting from your lower back, these spinal nerves supply such structures as your legs, reproductive organs, bladder, kidneys, and colon. As we move up the spine to the upper back or thoracic spine, the exiting spinal nerves supply such organs as your liver, stomach, heart, and lungs. Moving up further to your neck, these nerves supply such structures as your eyes, ears, throat, and arms. Now, in a healthy spine, your spinal bones or vertebrae are in proper alignment, and the cushioning or shock absorbers between the vertebrae, called intervertebral discs, are thick and healthy. As such, correct spinal movement is possible, and the spinal nerves are able to freely exit the spine, sending nerve impulses from the brain to the targeted muscles and organs without any interference. However, from poor posture, falls, a car accident, or some other injury, your vertebrae can become misaligned. This misalignment is what chiropractors call vertebral subluxation complex, or just subluxation. When a subluxation occurs, your vertebrae can then press on these existing spinal nerves and interfere and block these nerve impulses. When this happens, nerve damage begins and your body starts to dysfunction. Although potentially painless at first, symptoms can develop rapidly. And when a subluxation is left untreated, your spine begins to decay. Your discs begin to thin and wear down, and your vertebrae start to deform and degenerate, leading to the development of these spurs or osteophytes, which then further compresses and damages your nerves. So when a subluxation occurs in your lower back, it can cause back pain, sciatica, bladder weakness, irritable bowel syndrome, and erectile dysfunction. A subluxation in your upper back can cause respiratory problems, digestive problems, and decreased energy levels. And subluxations in your neck can cause headaches, dizziness, tinnitus, carpal tunnel syndrome, numbness, tingling, and weakness to one or both of your arms. Fortunately, chiropractic can help. In fact, chiropractors are the only healthcare professionals that are specifically and adequately trained to detect and correct vertebral subluxations. And through a series of precise chiropractic adjustments, your chiropractor will restore your spine's proper alignment, remove nerve interference, and return your body to its optimal health. And it's important to note, your body has the ability to heal itself, so long as there is no interference. So, having a healthy spine is not just about removing pain and symptoms, but achieving your body's maximum health potential.
How does your arm move when you want it to move? How do you remember the way to your friend's house? Why do you blink without you ever thinking about it? If you think it is your brain, you are correct. Your brain runs the show and controls just about everything you do, including those activities which are going on inside your bodies. All such actions have to be properly timed and coordinated, which is done by the nervous system and the hormonal system. Let's understand the nervous system. The nervous system is an organ system containing a network of specialized cells called neurons that coordinate the actions of an animal and transmit signals between different parts of its body. The nervous system is divided into two main systems: the central nervous system, that is CNS, and the peripheral nervous system. The spinal cord and the brain make up the CNS. Its main job is to get the information from the body and send out instructions. The peripheral nervous system is made up of all the nerves which transmit the messages from the brain to the rest of the body. The peripheral nervous system connects the CNS to sensory organs, such as the eye and ear, other organs of the body, muscles, blood vessels, and glands. The central nervous system is comprised of the brain and spinal cord, which is located in and protected by the skull and the vertebral column. Neurons are the basic building blocks of the nervous system. These specialized cells are the information processing units of the brain, responsible for receiving and transmitting information. Each part of the neuron plays a role in the communication of information throughout the body. Let us learn the structure of a neuron. A neuron has three basic parts: the cell body, the axon, and the dendrites. Cell body contains a well-defined nucleus surrounded by a granular cytoplasm. The cell body is also known as perikaryon or cyton. Dendrites are branched cytoplasmic projections of the cell body. They are for receiving impulses from the axon of another neuron. Dendrites of one axon of the other neuron are separated by an extremely narrow space called the synaptic cleft. Through this synaptic cleft, nerve impulses are transmitted. The axon, also called the nerve fiber, is a long process of a neuron cell body. The axon is specialized to carry messages. An axon of one neuron may have enough branches to make contact with as many as 1,000 other neurons. Axons are covered by a protective layer of a white insulating sheet called myelin sheath. The myelin sheath shows gaps throughout the length, which are called nodes of Ranvier. The end portion of axons have swollen bulbs called axon terminals that store certain chemicals called neurotransmitters. There are three different types of neurons. The first one is sensory neurons, which carry impulses from the sense organs to the central nervous system. The second type of neuron is motor neuron, which carries impulses from the CNS to muscles or glands of our body. And the third type of neuron is interneuron, which connect various neurons within the brain and spinal cord. It carries information between the motor and sensory neurons. Did you know that the brain is the most complex organ in the human body? Let us learn more about it. The brain is the center of the nervous system. It is a jelly-like mass of tissue, weighing around 1.4 kilograms, containing a staggering 1,000 billion neurons. The brain is protected by three membranous coverings called meninges, which also continue on the spinal cord. The outermost layer is called dura mater, which is the touch and fibrous membrane. The middle layer is the arachnoid layer, which is thin, delicate, and gives a web-like cushion, while the innermost layer is highly vascular, richly supplied with the blood, and is called pia mater. Inflammation of the meninges causes the disorder called meningitis. The space between these membranes is filled with the cerebrospinal fluid, CSF. It acts like a cushion to protect the brain from shocks. This fluid also fills the spaces inside the brain and the central canal of the spinal cord.
The peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is composed of the somatic and the autonomic nervous systems. The somatic nervous system enables voluntary movement of skeletal muscles all over your body. The somatic nervous system also reports the current state or position of all skeletal muscles in your body so that you know what you can and cannot do at any given time. Your internal organs are controlled by the autonomic nervous system. Think of it as an automatic system. You don't need to think to make your heart beat or to breathe, do you? I will cover all of the organs that it controls in a moment. Some of the autonomic nervous system can be consciously overridden. For example, you can control how quickly you breathe, or if you breathe at all, by consciously overriding your autonomic nervous system. However, most parts of it you can't control. The autonomic nervous system is a dual system. It is made up of the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system arouses internal organs when the body faces a challenge or as something alarms or enrages you. When arousing organs, it dilates the pupils, accelerates heartbeat, inhibits digestion, stimulates the liver to release glucose, stimulates the adrenal glands to release epinephrine and norepinephrine, and it relaxes the bladder. The parasympathetic nervous system produces the opposite effect. It calms your internal organs when you aren't facing a challenge or aren't angered or alarmed. It calms you by contracting your pupils, slowing your heartbeat, stimulating digestion, stimulating the gallbladder, and contracting the bladder. Both systems work together to keep our bodies in a healthy balance.
Hi there, boys and girls. Welcome to the second part of our nervous system series. This vodcast is going to discuss the two major divisions of the nervous system, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So you got to remember, the nervous system is what coordinates everything between your brain and the body. And nothing in our body would work without the nervous system. So our muscles and organs and glands don't work if we don't have anything connecting them to the brain. So let's take a look at an overview of the nervous system. Okay, so the nervous system's main job is to maintain a state in the body called homeostasis, which we talked about before. Remember, homeostasis is when the body is trying to keep everything the same. So homeo sounds like homo, which means the same, and stasis has the word stay in it, so it's kind of easy to remember to stay the same. So we want to keep the same body temperature, the same oxygen levels, the same water levels. And the nervous system maintains homeostasis by detecting changes in the environment called stimuli. So when the environment changes, our body's going to react to it to maintain everything at the proper order. For example, you're nice and cool inside your air-conditioned house, and then you walk outside, and it's 90 degrees outside, and your body starts sweating. Well, the change in the environment was the air temperature making your body warmer. And as a result, to keep your body at 98.6 degrees, your skin starts to sweat, and that sweat evaporates off of your body to make you cool. The stimuli, the change in the environment, the warmer temperatures, cause the change in your body to try to keep your body temperature the same, because if you overheat, you can get heat stroke and things will go bad at that point. In order to maintain this homeostasis by detecting the stimuli, our nervous system coordinates two divisions. We have our central nervous system, and then we have our peripheral nervous system. Our central nervous system includes the spinal cord and the brain. The spinal cord basically connects the brain to the body, and the brain controls everything and coordinates all the body's activities, and the brain itself is broken up into three parts. We have the cerebrum, the brainstem, and the cerebellum. Then our peripheral nervous system is made of the nerves outside of the central nervous system. So these are the nerves that run out from the spinal cord, and there are two groups of them. We have voluntary peripheral nerves, which are called somatic nerves, and then we have involuntary peripheral nerves called autonomic nerves. The autonomic nerves sound like the word automatic, which means they happen on their own, which is exactly what an involuntary function is. That's an easy way to remember the difference between an autonomic nerve and a somatic nerve in the peripheral nervous system. So let's take a closer look at these divisions here. Okay, so here we have a picture of the central nervous system. And the central nervous system is easy to remember because the central nervous system basically tells you where these components are found. They're found in the center of the body. So if we take a look at this picture here, you'll notice that the brain, located here, is located in the center of the body and is connected to the spinal cord that runs down the middle of your back. Now, the brain has various functions to it. If we take a closer look at the brain, we can take a look at the three parts and what they do. Your brain has the cerebrum, which is this large section of the brain at the top here. I always remember it looking like a boxing mitt. And then we have the cerebellum right underneath the cerebrum. And then you have the brainstem. And the brainstem sounds exactly what it is. It looks like a stem that's attached to the brain. Kind of like how a stem is attached to a flower. So in the cerebrum up top here, as you can see, it's got a lot of different functions to it. And it's actually broken up into different lobes. However, the functions of the cerebrum include sensory information. All of your senses are processed here. You walk into a house and you smell chocolate chip cookies. It's your brain that determines that it's chocolate chip cookies that you smell. You taste those chocolate chip cookies and you think, they're delicious. That's your brain processing the delicious taste of chocolate chip cookies. Okay, the sight of chocolate chip cookies. You walk in and you see the chocolate chip cookies and it's your brain that says, hey, those are chocolate chip cookies, because they match that information with images that you learned about chocolate chip cookies. And then the touch of them, if the chocolate chip cookies are hot, then you know not to pick it up. If they're cool, then you know to pick it up, and they're rough and whatnot. And then lastly, hearing. Anything that you hear, maybe your mother calling you to come get these brand new chocolate chip cookies. That gets all processed by the brain. So all of your senses are processed by the brain, and that's what tells you what those things are. Now, in addition to sensory information processing, we have learning and memorization. So whenever you learn something like how delicious chocolate chip cookies are, and you memorize what they look like and taste like and smell like, that occurs in the different areas of the cerebrum as well. The cerebrum also takes place of language and comprehension, and also speech. So the fact that you're able to understand what your friend is saying and then able to respond back to them is controlled by the cerebrum. And then lastly, your personality is found here. If you're a funny guy or girl, it's because that personality has developed inside of your cerebrum. If you are an intense competitor on the athletic field, that's your cerebrum that develops that type of sense. So your cerebrum is an extremely powerful center of the brain, and it has the most jobs to do. Now the cerebellum is pretty basic. It controls the balance and coordination of your movements. So if you really want to test your cerebellum, you can stand up right now out of your chair and stand on one foot. And when you stand on one foot, you'll feel the foot that is on the ground is shifting back and forth to make sure that your legs are staying balanced and that you don't fall down. That would be the cerebellum receiving information and sending information out from the brain and to the body to make sure your leg stays put so you don't fall down, because you don't want to get hurt. And then lastly, we have the brainstem. The brainstem controls all of the involuntary functions that our body takes care of that we don't necessarily think about. So as your heart is beating right now while you're watching this vodcast, that's your brainstem taking care of that. Now that you're digesting your lunch or your breakfast, that's your brainstem taking care of that digestive process, and also your breathing, so your body can make energy. And that, again, is your brainstem taking care of your breathing. So the brainstem really takes care of all the functions that we don't necessarily need to think about that are very important to us. So that's the brain and the parts of the brain and the jobs of the brain in the central nervous system. Now, if we go back, the central nervous system, as we said before, includes the spinal cord, and the spinal cord acts like a relay center. Now, the spinal cord needs to relay information out to our peripheral nervous system. And this is what our peripheral nervous system looks like. Your brain comes up with a signal inside of it and sends it down. So for example, you want to grab a book. So obviously you need the arm muscles in your body to get activated to grab the book and lift it up and open it up. So your brain sends a signal down the spinal cord, and then in order to get to the arm muscles, you need connecting nerves, and that's what the peripheral nervous system does. It connects the central nervous system to the rest of your body. As we get connection to our arms, our biceps flex to pick up the book, and then the different muscles in our forearms and hands open up the book, and then we can read and start processing the information through our brain. So the peripheral nervous system is just all these different nerves that are on the outside of the spinal cord or attached to the spinal cord. That's it. That's all the peripheral nervous system is. And there's two sections to it. We have a somatic nervous system, and our somatic nervous system controls voluntary functions. So remember, when we talked about it earlier this year, voluntary functions are functions that you can control, work. However, we do have our autonomic nervous system. Okay, our autonomic nervous system, again, means automatic, and it controls all the involuntary functions that happen automatically that we don't think about. Boys and girls, those are the two major parts of the nervous system, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Thank you very much.
Communication between two neurons begins when an electrical impulse called an action potential travels along the axon of a presynaptic neuron toward the axon terminal. The action potential cannot cross the synaptic space. When it reaches the axon terminal, it causes membranous sacs called vesicles to move toward the membrane of the axon terminal. The membrane of the vesicle fuses with the membrane of the axon terminal, enabling the vesicle to release its contents into the synaptic space. The molecules released from the vesicles are chemicals called neurotransmitters. They drift across the synaptic space and bind to special proteins called receptors on the postsynaptic neuron. The binding of a neurotransmitter to its receptor can trigger an action potential in the postsynaptic neuron. That electrical signal then moves toward the cell body of the postsynaptic neuron. Now that the neurotransmitter has relayed its message, it releases from the receptor into the synaptic space. Some of the neurotransmitter is degraded by enzymes in the synaptic space, and some of the neurotransmitter is carried back into the presynaptic neuron through transporter proteins. The neurotransmitter that is taken back up into the presynaptic neuron is then repackaged into vesicles that can be released the next time an action potential reaches the axon terminal. The entire process repeats each time an action potential reaches the axon terminal of the presynaptic neuron.